Today, to be secular and to be liberal is almost akin to being ungodly and aberrant. Take, for example, some remarks made at the 60th PAS Muktamar held in Batu Pahat, Johor last weekend. In his closing speech, the president of Malaysia's second largest Malay-based party, after UMNO, Datuk Sri Abdul Hadi Awang, took an unequivocal stand in differentiating his party's Islamic struggle from his coalition allies. So, and I quote, "PAS members must understand that there is a difference. PKR is based on pragmatic secularism, while DAP is based on socialistic secularism." That's my translation. Well, I think whether he realizes it or not, Tuan Guru Hadi's statement envisions actually a dichotomy between Islam and secularism, as if these are two disparate concepts that are not only different, but also antithetical to each other. In other words, one can either be Islamic or secular, but not both. Although our first three prime ministers would disagree with Hadi Awang's view, and actually the first and third prime minister have taken public stands to this effect, but the unfortunate reality is that such opinion, I think, actually now reverberates amongst the Malay Muslims in the country, including those that we may deem as the more urbane and educated middle class. And I think one only has to drive around. You look at some university campuses, community centers, even outside mosques, you see banners peppered with phrases such as the dangers of secularism, bahaya secularism, secularism the main threat to the Muslim Ummah, or even Islam versus secularism. Meanwhile, the government-controlled media would continue to propagate this perception, with many columnists usually very quick to label those inclined towards secular and liberal ideals as Jewish or American agents. Invariably, these agents also turn out to be opposition politicians most of the time. And as we can see, no rational discussion can take place whenever these terms are invoked. So perhaps one may ask at this point, why does an intrinsically human value such as freedom invoke so much fear amongst Malay Muslims in our country? Why is it that, Muslims here would go so far as to insult Islam by implying that the religion would not be able to survive if its followers were not bound to it by force of law? Are Malay Muslims so insecure in their own faith that they think mass apostasy would occur the instant they are given the freedom to do so? I would think that actually the origins of this fear in the Malay psyche can perhaps be traced back to the colonial experience. I think following the signing of the Pangkor Treaty in 1874 between the British and the then Sultan of Perak, essentially meant that the Malay rulers began to lose their absolute power. And in fact, they were only left with authority over matters relating to Malay culture and religion. So fast forward today, the Malay rulers have been relegated even further to playing what is supposed to be a ceremonial role as a symbolic protector of Islam. However, this feudal relationship between the ruling class and the masses had to be maintained. Hence, the myth that Malay identity would be lost without a higher authority to protect it, to protect the cultural symbols. So this myth was perpetuated with the state instead assuming the role that the Malay rulers used to play as the defender of Malay Muslim culture. And this has since been constitutionally enshrined. So as a result of this attempt to institutionalize the religion, Islam in Malaysia has become characterized by tight state control over its interpretation and administration. In other words, the state now dictates or tries to dictate every aspect of the Malay Muslim life, from what can or cannot be eaten, whether it's permissible to use Facebook, to practice yoga, or to dance the pocho-pocho, and even right down to what schools of thought can or cannot be practiced, as if God requires help from the Malaysian government. Thus, it's obvious that the conflation between Islam and the state has resulted in a state of dependency that has, if anything, reinforced these Malay-Muslim insecurities. So I think, seen in this context, any ideology that encourages freedom of thought and conscience is therefore seen as a threat to the state's monopoly on Islam. Hence, I think that is why we see today the Islamic authorities' newfound obsession over the perils of secularism and liberalism. If the Malaysian authorities fear the freedom that secularism and liberalism may entail, it is simply because they fear losing their ideological monopoly over the people and hence their political legitimacy. So to the contrary, I would suggest that secularism and liberalism are philosophical ideals that would strengthen and embolden Islam. And a truly Islamic society is one that is free in thought, free in conscience, where Islam is practiced honestly and where rituals are performed out of belief and not out of fear or pressure.